Well, the increasing likelihood of a significant shift in France's political landscape is leading to concerns across the policy spectrum, not least with regards to foreign policy. Bardella says that France would not send troops or long-range missiles to Ukraine under his government, though he did acknowledge dangers to European security presented by Russia. Take a listen here.
My red line is very clear. It's the sending of troops to Ukrainian territory. I do not plan to create the conditions for and put in place the deployment of French troops into Ukrainian territory. That's my position, the position of our movement, and it has not changed.
For more on the subject, I'm joined by Jean-Paul PALOMEROS, who's former Supreme Commander of NATO's allied forces and former Air Force Chief of Staff here in France. Mr. PALOMEROS, thanks for taking the time to be with us. How do you interpret the National Rally's stated position on Russia as a threat to Europe, given that the party has been financed by Russian interests in the past and until recently refused to take a firm position on that Ukraine war?
Well, as we can see, defense is not at the forefront of these elections, legislative elections. And this is true for the two extreme parties, if I may say so. Here we have Mr. Bardella. There's a lot of subjects which are still on the table, like what will happen with NATO and how much support each party would deliver to Ukraine. And we have heard that the long-range missiles, for instance, which are so crucial, are not obviously part of what the National Rally will provide to Ukraine. But we must remember for all our auditors is that the defense is a domaine réservé of the chief of state, Mr. Macron. So, but on the other hand, the deputy have to vote for the budget, the defense budget. So we have there a big question: how much they will support the overall defense effort, the overall defense policy, which is really supported by the Mr. Macron, president. How much they will support the effort for a war economy as it started in support to Ukraine. This is still to be determined, and I see there an ambiguity. And only two parties are clear on this domain so far, Les Républicains and the Mr. Attal party, because obviously they are on the line. The second one are on the line of the president, and the second, and Les Républicains, they have stated their position for. They've been stating their position for a while. I'm speaking of those who are not, who didn't join the National Rally.
Well, obviously, the mainstream political sphere fairly troubled by the National Rally's rise, as 170 current and former French diplomats published an open letter just today warning that a far-right victory would weaken French and European security at a time when the continent is seeing its widest ongoing land war since World War II. Let's take a listen right now to an excerpt from that letter.
Our opponents will read a far-right victory as France weakening and an invitation to interfere in our national politics, to be aggressive against Europe, including militarily, to the economic vassalization of France and the continent. Our country's cracked armour will expose it to more blows from them, delivered with increased energy, spreading the poison of division, communitarianism, racism and anti-Semitism, and threatening both national cohesion and security.
Mr. PALOMEROS, if I could, what would be your concerns for French and European military security overall if the National Rally were to win these elections? Would you be concerned about increased Russian meddling in security policies?
Of course, the Russian will take any opportunity, but not only with the far right, but with the far left as well. We know there are connections with Mr. Mélenchon, La France Insoumise. So we must take a very balanced view on the extreme parties who are really not clear about their position towards Russia and their position, overall position about defense. Let's see, on the extreme left, defense is not, there is not a single word about military, about defense in their program. So we don't know. And we know that there are positions between Mr. Mélenchon on the one hand and Mr. Mr. Glucksmann. So, and this is true for Europe, the European dimension. This is true for NATO. So we have two extremes which are not clear regarding their position to this situation vis-à-vis Russia. So, but again, there we will have a balanced question about the president's role in foreign affairs and in defense, and the role of the ruling party, if there is one, towards the defense and foreign affairs policy. That will be the first time, I think, in the French recent history that we could come to this position, because before, when we have cohabitations, they were more or less on the same path with the socialists, the right. Well, there was no big discrepancies. The nuclear was very clearly part of the inventory, etc., etc. So, yeah, a very worrying situation, I can say, for defense and for military.
Well, since you brought it up, let's turn to the other side of the political spectrum now, the left coalition, the New Popular Front. Obviously, there has been in the past some significant ambivalence about Ukraine and Russia from some of the more leftward elements like La France Insoumise, France Unbowed. It seems, though, that the NFP has managed to find some consensus on supporting Ukraine against Russia. Do you then think that that commitment would hold after the elections or no?
Well, difficult to say, because for the time being, we have no real program. So supporting as a principle, yes. I know that they've written somewhere that they will support in giving the weapons to Ukraine. We don't know which weapons, but this is a starter. So, but if you look back a little bit on the history of this coalition, that will be a tough challenge for them to come with a concrete and I would say positive position on this specific domain, because their vision is very different. And I'm speaking as well of the defense of Europe. So yes, but we are not there yet. This is why it's a bit concerning coming from extreme right, extreme left for the military, for defense. And we need to keep on the defense efforts to be up to the challenges of security in Europe. That's for sure.
Well, on that subject, to wrap up, I think here, President Macron has been pushing hard in recent months, in fact, throughout his second mandate, for more European military sovereignty, he calls it. Do you think that a big loss for his Renaissance Party in these elections will mean a big step back from these European efforts to build up a military and security capabilities independent of the U.S.?
Well, again, there is an ambiguity. Let's take now the extreme right. They say we need more sovereignty. Okay, we need to invest in our defense, but they are not very clear on how much this question of defense extends as well to Europe. They are defending national interests, which is perfectly acceptable, but we don't know to which stage they will come back on the progress, if I may say so, of European defense, and to which level they will keep it. So kind of ambiguity, but there is a risk that, yes, the effort which has been done to reinforce European defense as a whole would be jeopardized. There is a risk, obviously.
All right, Jean-Paul PALOMEROS, former Supreme Commander of the NATO Allied Forces and former Air Force Chief of Staff here in France. That's all I have time for. Thank you so much, though, for your insight.